Thank you so much, Nicole. I am so excited to be here. I'm Melissa Esplin. I teach calligraphy classes over at calligraphy.org. And we're going to do a mixture of squeegee painting. I don't know if you've seen that before. It's kind of taken TikTok and Instagram by storm. It's been really fun to watch those videos, for me personally at least. A little bit about me. I am Melissa Esplin. I'm from the Snowy Mountains of Utah. I was just telling Nicole how last year we had an epic year. I'm kind of hoping we're in for another epic year. We should get some snow soon. So hopefully this will be kind of a good project today to set the tone for spooky season. I'm super pumped to teach a few techniques. One about squeegee art and then another about hand lettering. And if you want to learn more about hand lettering, I hope you check out my online classes at calligraphy.org. You can find me on social media. I'm at Melissapher. It's like Melissa and calligrapher put together. And say hi, tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see how your projects turn out. So with that, let's get started on the materials that I want you to have on hand. If you don't have the materials on hand, don't worry, feel free to take notes. Again, like Nicole said, this will be published onto YouTube, so you can pause and play, speed things up and slow things down as necessary. So let's dig into the materials that you need. First and foremost, we want tube watercolors. And I'm using watercolors. Traditionally, we've done, I've used acrylic paints, but I really like the idea of watercolor because we can apply our watercolor wash knowledge with the squeegee paint, kind of mix the two together for a really fun idea. So let me show you what I mean by that. So this is just regular squeegee art right here. And this, see how it trails off like that? Is using watercolor techniques. So I really love using the watercolor tubes for this very, very reason. So the pigments that I'm going to focus mostly on today, with the black paper, I'm going to be using black and silver. And with the white paper, I'm going to be using black and gray. I have white here just in case we decide we want to use that, but really, there's no need to have a palette or anything like that. You can just work directly from the tubes themselves. Okay, you'll want black or white cardstock paper. So I have, this is Speedball's Arnhem printmaking paper, but you can also use a hot press or cold press watercolor paper. This is black cardstock. I just got this at Michael's and I really might see my camera's having a hard time focusing on it. I just got this from Michael's. It was just black cardstock from Michael's. You can also use black Stonehenge watercolor paper, also found at Michael's. You can't really tell. Let's see if I can get a different point of view. See how it's got just a slight tooth to it? Oh, it's really fun to work with. So you can really just use whatever black or white papers you have on hand. That should work. The next thing you will want is a jelly roll. So I have both the jelly roll size 10 in white or the jelly roll silver metallic in the retractable. Either one totally works. They work great on this. I personally prefer the silver because it works very well on both white and black papers. The white obviously is going to get washed out, so you're going to need a different pen for that. So the next thing you'll need is a pencil. We're going to be doing some lettering techniques, and even the master penmen from the late 1800s used pencils to draft out their work. So us hobbyists and artists can use a pencil as well. So I use a pencil with all of my work. We'll need a pencil for that. You'll need a squeegee, or if you're a little bit lazy like me and you don't have a squeegee on hand that's the right size. The squeegees I have are like 12 inches wide, and it just felt cumbersome when I was doing the test prints that I just used a flexible plastic ruler. You can use an old credit card or gift card as well. So there's no wrong material for this particular part. Then the next thing you'll need optionally is a piece of, just some tape. This is regular washi tape. You can use Scotch tape, but I like how washi tape doesn't pull apart the fibers of the paper, so I prefer to use that. And optionally, I have an atomizer or a little spray bottle with water inside it, and a brush. This is a water brush by Sakura. It's the large. You can use any size brush. Doesn't have to be a water brush, but you'll want a watercolor brush in case we do any touch-ups. So those are the core materials that we have. Let's talk about how this functions. So the idea is, and I forgot to grab scratch paper. Let me grab some scratch paper real quick. The idea is that we are we're just applying dots to the paper, and then from there we're smearing the dots. So the general layout for this spooky ghost is we want to have a dot on either side of the page. These are the arms of the ghost. Then we want to have an arch. It's going to look kind of like this. The arch is going to be the head of the ghost, the top, the crown of the head. Then we want to have a dot for the eyes and the mouth. I like to make the mouth just a little bit longer than a regular dot. And then what I do here, so these are going to be black. And we're going to do dots here, here, and here. That'll either be silver or gray, depending upon if you use a white or a black paper. So we create the dots in a very specific pattern, and then we pull down with our squeegee, and then all of a sudden our design comes through. So that's really the plan that we're going to do. I'm going to just show it to you on the white paper real quick. Let's start off with gray. And this is color number 44, gray. What you'll want to do, and you'll also need paper towels. I don't know if that I mentioned that before. Sometimes there's a little bit of medium that's at the top of these jars, these tubes of watercolor. So make sure if there's any paint medium that it's not just straight pigment, that you wipe that off on your paper towel. Okay. And here we're going to do our little upside down. I'm not going to call it a frown because we're really happy to be here creating an art project. So our upside down smiley face with our dots on either side. And you don't want to put tons of pigment down, but don't be too stingy about it either. So it kind of looks like a weird frowny face. And then I'm going to switch to my black. Again, I'm going to make sure that I don't have any clear medium on there before I do a little bit of black. And the black I'm going to be more stingy on. I'm really just barely pressing down to create this shape. So you see like the ghost shape kind of coming through here, but I do want to put a little bit of gray just underneath the eyes and the mouth. So we're creating this shape here. For some reason, my camera is really not wanting to focus on that shape. Let's see if this is a better. See that? Just easy, simple shape right there. So now I'm going to grab my ruler, just easy ruler. And oh, this is where the tape comes in. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around. I don't need to be going fast. We can go nice and slow. We want to get our piece of tape and just tape it down at the top. You don't really have to tape anywhere besides the top, just because we're going to be pressing down with both hands. We want to apply even pressure all the way down to the bottom. You don't want to deal with your paper sliding around. So I'm going to grab my ruler, and you don't have to rush this at all. The paint takes a minute to dry. So we can go nice and slow. I'm gonna apply even pressure, and let's go from here. Even pressure, see how my ruler is at about a 45-degree angle? We wanna keep that angle throughout. We don't wanna tip too far up or too shallow. We wanna apply a decent amount of pressure. You don't wanna scrape all the paint off, but we do wanna be relatively aggressive as we scrape our paper, okay? So I'm going to apply pressure and just pull straight down. And see how that black pigment just, it stops and then it starts again. And it looks like it's skipping over this gray pigment just a little bit. So what I can do here is, maybe I didn't pull quite as aggressively as I could have. So I just cleaned off my ruler here, and I can press a little harder, and that cleans it up just a little bit. I'm going to dip my ruler into my water jar and clean that off. I want to make sure that I clean this off so that every time I do a pull, I get a clean result. So this is the general idea that we want to go for. That we've got the two dots, make that hand, and we don't want them too far apart. Otherwise, this dot, as it squeegees down, won't connect with this main arc part here. We also want to make sure that we apply a fair amount of pigment here and here with our gray, so you can see the difference between the eyes and the mouth. And I'm not seeing a ton of difference here. It didn't turn out exactly like I had hoped. So I'm going to go through and just touch up a little bit. And I'm going to apply, I'm just going to grab a little bit of pigment straight from the tube and do some streaks, just downward streaks. So it looks like it's still part of the artwork. So that gives us a little bit more definition here. So we can play around with that. We don't have to, if we didn't create an absolutely perfect pull the very first time, oh, we're done. We have to start over again. There's quite a bit that we can work from. There's no one telling you in this rule book of creating spooky art that you can't touch things up. I love, Sabrina just said, that's such a cute face even before the squeegee. It is like, seriously, this is such a fun activity. And especially with people of all ages and all skill levels, you can really get into it and play around. It's a mind shift, to be honest. It sort of helps pull you from this left brain thinking to more right brain thinking, which is really, really fun. So yeah, I really, really love this. So let's work on this on black paper. This is the Strathmore watercolor paper. And I'm going to tape this down. Put that up to the very, very top. Okay. And then I'm going to zoom out just a bit so you can see what's going from top to bottom of this page. So with the black paper, I'm not going to use gray because the gray doesn't really pop quite so much. Here, I'll show you. I'm going to just apply a little bit of gray on the corner of this paper. And it's okay, but it doesn't really sing like I want it to. So we're going to use silver for the black paper. So I'm going to grab this silver. And I'm going to put in my arch, I'm gonna actually leave a fair amount of space and start a lot lower than I did before. And this silver is a lot more liquidy than the gray is. So I'm just dragging it along and letting that silver just come through and kind of drip out on its own. I'm gonna get a dollop on one side, and we can play around. I can change so the arm is a little lower on the left side, and I want to make sure that I'm not getting too many drippies. I'm going to put in my 2 black dots, and this is where it's going to be a little tougher to see. Let's see if we can get a little bit brighter so you can see the difference between the black paper and the black pigment. So I'm going to put my eyes down. Just barely, basically make it the size of the tube. My mouth, I'm going to make a little bit lower, a little bit bigger. Then I'm going to use my silver to draw underneath here. And right here, I'm going to put a little bit more of the silver that I'm putting of the black, because the black can tend to overtake the whole thing. So you see how, the general idea is I want to have these nice, clean, tidy dots, but they're not perfectly tidy, and that's totally fine. This is a really fun, playful project. Okay, now I'm going to come in through here, and I'm going to go just above and pull. And instead of pulling just straight down towards my body, and one thing that I'm doing here is I'm leaning my whole body back. I don't know if you can see it. You can't really see it on the picture-in-picture, but as I'm pulling back, I'm going like this. My whole body is just like moving all together. But with this part, we're going to go one side more than the other, and we're going to wiggle our way down. So apply fair, even pressure on both sides, and we're going to try and wiggle our way down. Isn't that fun? He turned out so cute. So we've got a fair amount of excess on here, and it may be argued that we're wasting watercolor pigment, but I don't think so, because look at how cute that is. That turned out so fun. I'm going to dip my ruler in water and wipe this clean. Look at how fun that turned out. Even with the little bits of irregularities going through there, I really like how it turned out. I think that's kind of fun. I'm not going to do any touching up here. Well, maybe I can touch up. I'll round his arms out just a little bit more. So I'm going to grab this pigment here. I just feel like it is helpful for you to see how I approach touching up and how I approach mistakes, so that because we all make mistakes, it's not a matter of if, but when, that we feel empowered to know how to approach them. Either just changing our attitude and our perspective of what perfectionism is or what our mistakes are, or just feeling like, well, I don't have the tools, and have the right tools in place to correct those mistakes. So I just rounded off his arm just a little bit. I feel like that works. I feel like that feels finished. Nice and done. Okay. So I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to move on to the lettering portion of this workshop. The lettering portion will probably take a little bit more time and we'll focus on that a little bit. Okay, so this I'm going to set aside because, man, he turned out so cute. Okay, so I'm going to grab another one. This is really ideal with the watercolor paper. So I'm going to grab another piece of my watercolor paper. And what we're going to do here is create that ghosting effect. So you'll notice here as I pulled, I needed to pull completely off the page because I had so much ink left that he just came off the page. And I think that's a really fun effect. But if you want the ghost to appear floating, we're going to do a slightly different technique. So let's work on drawing our little ghost guy first. I'm going to tape him out. So get him taped up nice and secure right there. And then I'm going to create the face just like I did last time. So get that silver ink. And I'm going to start just a little bit at the 1/3 mark. That's where I'm going to start. So, I've got to make sure I have the right pigment. I need to get silver. So I'm creating my little arch. Just letting that pigment come out in an arch. Got the arm happening. Then I'm going to grab my black paint, and I'm using less black paint than I'm using silver paint, just because I don't want it to take over. So I've got my little daubs of black for the eyes. And we're going to do the mouth. I'm going to spread it out just a little bit, create more of an oblong shape. And then I'm going to create my backstop with the silver, so it's not all black coming down. Okay. Oh, and I want a little bit below here too. Okay. So we've got our face shape pretty much done. Now I'm going to grab my atomizer, it doesn't have to be anything special. It can be just any regular squirt bottle. This one is just one that goes with my travel kit, so I have it with me all the time. And it sprays a pretty fine mist. I'm going to spray this bottom. I'm going to spray the bottom of my page, and see that it's like starting to curl up a little bit. That's fine. Don't worry about it curling too much. So we're just going to apply pressure and do our pull. Okay. So now I'm going to pull down, apply that 45-degree pressure, even pressure all the way throughout. And voila, because we had the wet already down there, that it created this nice tapering effect. Isn't that so fun? I love it. I love it. So I'm just cleaning off my ruler. I just love how this tapering effect happens. It creates a really fun effect. So one thing that you can do, because we still have this pigment and it's not fully set yet, if you want more things to happen, you can spray it some more and see how it's starting to rush down even more. So it's going to create even more veining effects, which is really cool because you can't really tell how textured this paper is, but the pigment is going to tell you how textured the paper is, which is really, really fun. So we're going to let that sit and dry while we talk about the hand lettering aspects of this particular workshop. So I'm going to grab another piece of paper. We're going to practice on a spare piece of paper. I'm going to show you on gridded paper first. basically what we're doing is we're creating Roman lettering that that will then, we're just basically doing all caps lettering, and then we're adding shading to it. I didn't include a handout today. If you want to learn more, I have a hand lettering foundations class where you can play around. I give you the theory and you explore the theory with your own particular styles. But for today, I'll tell you exactly how to execute the words boo. If you have any requests for like Halloween or spooky or any other words, I can definitely show you how to write those letters out. But first, we're going to talk about the letters and how we apply this pressure. I'm going to use, this is the Pigma Professional Bold Brush. You don't have to be using this today, but I'm going to use it today to demonstrate in a large way so that you can see so easily on screen. So first, we've got our letter B. I'm going to create, this style is going to be 6 boxes tall. So this is the height of my letters. This is just how I'm going to practice and show you exactly how we do it. We don't have to be this precise. Oh, Kathy says, please do spooky. Okay, I think we have time, so I will do spooky also. We're going to create our letter B, and we want to visualize this letter B as about, I'm going to, actually, I changed my mind. Sorry. Since the exemplar that I have has a very thin style to it, we're going to do that same thin style. I'm not going to teach you like the traditional proportions of Romans. We're going to just do a condensed style as seen in the project. So I'm about 6 boxes tall, and I'm going to do 2 boxes wide. So here's my letter B. You can play around with the top bowl, this is called a bowl, being skinny and shorter, and the bottom bowl being bigger. This is a little more traditional, but if you want to play and be playful, you can reverse that where your proportion is bigger on top and smaller on the bottom. It creates this casualty to it, which is really fun. So what we want to do is we want to visualize this basic shape and draw the shading around it. So it's open shaded. So we're going to draw, I'm just using this as my reference. So I'm going to draw to the side, a downstroke, and then another downstroke, because this is my shade. This is my thickest part. This is how I'm adding the thickness to it, right? So I'm going to draw next to it and eyeball it. And I want to look at the line that I've drawn with my eyes. So my eyes are looking at this line while I'm actively drawing this line. Does that make sense? That helps you visualize how to create a better parallel line. So we have this nice thin, 2 thin parallel lines. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw the top bowl. And it's going to be nice and big. And then the bottom bowl is going to be nice and small. And I'm going to cross those 2 parallel lines. I'm going to cover those parallel lines. Okay. Now from here, I'm going to add the shading to the bowls of both the top and bottom of the B. And I start here at the top and I slowly swell and then slowly taper as I go in. So it's a very smooth transition from thick to thin. So that's our letter B. Our O is going to be a little bit wider. It's going to be like 2.5 boxes wide, and I'm going to do the whole O. You can do it in 1 stroke or in 2 downstrokes. It doesn't matter so much. So I'm visualizing this oval shape, and then I'm going to add the weight inside it. So I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm going to slowly add that weight inside it. And the thickest part right here, I want to be about as wide as that. I want them to be relatively consistent. We're going to have some variation here. And I think understanding and embracing the variation is really great. That's why we really are drawn towards hand lettering, because you see the human nature in it. You see that it's not computer generated, right? That that those irregularities are what make us human, and we love that human aspect. But you want to try for consistency and be okay when there's not that much consistency. Does that make sense? So we're going to do that. And then we do it on the right side also. I start on the same line and I swell and I taper back in. So we have this nice taper, thin line at the top, thick line at the on the side, and then thin on the bottom. So there's our B and our O that make up the boo, right? Our exclamation point, I can't say that word today. Our exclamation point is really just a line and a circle that are both open. So we're going to draw two parallel lines. If you want them coming slightly closer together, that works. So taper it a little bit towards the bottom, and then your open dot. So we're going to have that be our boo. Let's talk about spooky. Spooky is a fun word because we have a lot of curvy letters in there. So we've got some outliers going on that we will get to talk about, which is kind of fun. So I feel like it, you know, once you figure out B, you can figure out E, you can figure out F. There are other letters that are already kind of figured out for you. You figure out the O, you've got C, you've got G, you've got all these little family groupings that are together. S is kind of an outlier, which is in spooky, so we can address that. K is also an outlier, and so is Y. So once you have Y, then you can figure out N, V, W, and M. So it's kind of great. We'll approach the word spooky together, because then that'll help us build more of our letters, this like theory foundation. I like to teach these classes, these Michael's classes, I like to teach a project so you feel accomplished, but I also like to teach some theory along with it. So beyond this spooky class, you can apply some of the things that you learned today and feel more empowered as an artist and a creative. Okay, so our S, we're going to visualize an oval that's about 3 boxes wide, 6 boxes tall. That's roughly what we want to visualize here. Okay, so, and then I want to visualize an oval. Typically the oval on the top is smaller than the oval on the bottom, just like we did with this traditional B. But if we're going kind of more non-traditional, we're going to do the opposite. So we've got our little oval, and this top oval is going to be bigger, and this bottom oval is going to be smaller. So this gives us the structure that we can follow this. So we want to follow that basic line. I'm going to draw that again so you can see me draw over top the pencil markings, but still have reference for what those pencil markings represented before I draw them. So we've got our S. I'm going to start off here on the bottom or on the top. It's kind of like if you're looking at the oval, like it's a clock face, I'm looking at like 2 o'clock. I'm going to start at 2 o'clock, work my way up to 12 o'clock, work my way around, down, and up. Now we need to add our shading, and the shading happens right here. So we're going to add some thickness right here. If I wanted to accentuate this reverse proportion here, I would put the shade on the other side, so it would make the S feel even more bottom heavy, like sagging even more, but I don't. I kind of want to bring it back to the middle. So I'm going to apply this shading on the top. And sometimes if you are yourself at home are drawing out a letter S and you're like, well, that doesn't feel quite like the proportion that I wanted it to be. It feels too top heavy or too bottom heavy. Put the shade on the opposite side to help adjust that visualization. It's really nice that the S is really flexible in that way. So I'm going to add my shading. I'm going to start on that line and bring it around. Now, this doesn't feel finished. There are a couple ways that we can finish this. But really what it boils down to is we've got to do something with these empty, thin ends. There's something needs to be done with them. You see this top and bottom part of the bee, that's called a serif. We're going to do some serifs here. I'm going to do a serif on the top and just a terminal on the bottom. So you can see, you can mix and match. Now, serifs really go in one of two directions. Serifs are either horizontal or they're vertical. They're never any other angle besides that. I do see a lot people want to put a serif like that, but that doesn't look quite right. And if people are wondering, well, I did an S, but I don't like how the way it looks, it's typically because the serif is in the wrong angle. So it's creating this visual irregularity. So we want to put a serif here. It's vertical. So I'm going to create a serif here, and it can just be as simple as a line, or we can pull the top of the curve over to the top of the serif, and we can pull those together, and it works out great. And with the bottom of this, I can visualize kind of like a dewdrop. We're going to come around, circle back into itself. It's a dewdrop. We can do this on both the top and the bottom. You can do this on both the top and the bottom. You can mix and match. It's up to you. Both are acceptable ways to finish off the S, the C, the G, all of those curved ends, even the Y. You can get kind of, we'll play around with that in just a minute. Okay, so the P, if I'm going to do the B in this way, I'm going to basically do the P just like this, where I just basically forget to do the bottom bowl of the B. That's really what we're doing. So I'm going to draw two parallel lines down and down, and I want to keep them about the same width. And then I'm going to start with this top bowl. I'm going to make this top bowl kind of big, bring it down. Then I'm going to start off on that line that I previously drew, and I'm going to create my shading. So I'm going to swell and then taper. Okay, then we've got to finish off this bottom part of the P. We're going to create a serif. So I'm just pulling from left to right, and I'm keeping about the same distance here as I am here and here. So I want to keep those distances the same. Again, we are human, and humans aren't perfect. We're not computers. So if there's irregularity, that's okay. We see this human factor in it. Okay, so SP, we know how to do the O. I can do the O again. Let's just do it one more time. We draw ourselves a nice oval, and then we draw in, starting off on that same line that we created, and we draw in our swells and our tapers so that they're balanced on either side. Are they perfect and are they exactly the same? No, and it's fine. We don't need them to be the same. The reason why we're doing this ourselves is to create that human impact on it. Okay, so the letter K, we start off, we have our standard downstroke here, just like we do with the B and the P. But here we have a top part. It comes in just about middle, and a bottom part that comes off the arm. This is called the leg. And this is more of a traditional proportion here. So this traditional proportion can be played with. So if we're going to make it match this, I might bring it up and just make it more dramatic. So we've got this is far down, this is going to be too far up. You could have it down, but I feel like having it up and having the leg extra long feels better. So I'm going to draw those two parallel lines, make our capital stem, and it's not perfectly straight, and that's okay, because again, we're embracing the human element here. I'm going to draw my serif at the top and at the bottom, and then I'm going to draw my arm. So the arm is nice and high. It comes from the top to about, typically the middle, but we're going above because we're changing our proportions here. I'm going to have my serif here, and there's no weight on the arm. And a great way to think about this and remember this is never skip leg day, that dumb phrase that people use all the time. I never skip leg day because I like to bike too much. But we'd never skip shading the legs. So the arms take care of themselves. They're skinnier, they're lankier. We want the legs to have the weight, okay? So I'm gonna start, I don't connect right here at this intersection. I actually connect just above it and bring it down. And we can bring it down and have it curve if we want to. And just make it fun. And we want to add that shade to it. Instead of curving the shade up and having that equal weight here, I'm tapering it off. So we create a nice little taper. This leg is finished for itself, like it's done. It looks nice. Okay, for the Y, the typical Y proportion is going to look like this, where we have our stem here and then branches coming off of either side. We can elongate it. So the top part is more emphasized, or we can just shorten it so the bottom part is emphasized and we have a longer stem. I'm going to do the former and I'm going to elongate the top. And as far as where the weight goes, I'm visualizing this Y here, and I'm going to visualize the weight along this left-hand side. That's where I want the weight to be. If a line is diagonal, it's going from the top left to the bottom right. That's where the weight's going to be. You see on the K, and we'll see it on the Y. You see it on the M and the N and the V and the W. If it goes top left to bottom right, that's where the weight stays. So I'm going to draw this diagonal line, and then I'm going to draw the stem. So those two are going to be drawn together. This weight is going to be drawn together. I'm going to draw another line and down. Okay. So I'm going to add my serif at the bottom and the top. And then this is where we can play around with the serif, kind of like how I mentioned with the S. We can play around with this. We can have this come up and around, and we can have a little weight kind of come in over here, which is really fun because it's the end of a letter. We can do something fun. You could even like do curlicues and stuff. This is a really fun place to play. Even the leg of the K, that's another fun place to play. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to do a little arc and over. And then I'm going to add some weight right there. So that's going to be the Y. These are the basic structures of how to create the letters needed in Boo and Spooky. Now we need to bring all of this together and learn how to lay it out on our piece. So for example, I'm going to pull up my test piece from earlier today. We have the arc of the ghost's head. This is the arc that we want to use for our baseline, the bottom line of our letters. So what we'll want to visualize is this arc. And then we want to create a top line. So we want to create another arc. And I'm putting down a lot of lead here because I want you to be able to see exactly what I want you to visualize. So because we're lettering on an arc, I don't want all of your letters to be like this. You can do that, but it doesn't create that arc feel to it unless you're actually arcing out from a center point. So the O in the middle is going to be upright. This K is actually going to be not quite upright. And the Y is going to be off to the side. I guess the two O's should share the middle, but. So we're turning our page in order to draft out the word spooky, right? Okay, let's do an exclamation point or two to balance this out. That's one of the things about exclamation points, is that it can help if your spacing isn't quite perfect, and that's totally fine. So we want to approach this on a rainbow, and that's going to help give our letters a nice effect. And we can actually bounce around a little bit, and if our letters aren't perfect, at least we visualize this arc, so the eye of the viewer actually sees more consistency, and it builds towards the whole picture. So let's get started on black paper and draft that out. So I'm going to grab another pencil. This is not necessary. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Oh, I don't know if I have enough lead. This is a Sakura pencil, but I filled it with white lead, which is really great for drafting things out on dark paper. You don't need to use it because you can see pretty clearly your pencil lead on black paper if the lighting is okay in your space. I do want to use the white pencil because I feel like you can see better over the camera with this white pencil. So I'm going to basically rotate my paper and create little tick marks about an even width. I'm not using a ruler. You don't need to use a ruler for this part. So I'm going to draw the curvature of the head that I made. Okay, this is our baseline. And then I'm going to draw in the top part. And the key here to being really successful with lettering and creating compositions like this is use as light a touch with your pencil marking as absolutely possible. Think about when you were a kid, if you ever had a bug land on your hand, like a ladybug or a potato bug or pill bug or whatever, if you had it land on your hand and walked along your hand, how lightly it touched your hand surface. That's what I want you to think about when it comes to writing on the paper surface. It's so much easier to erase your pencil markings when you've barely marked the surface. So if you think about it, you've got the surface of your paper and then you've got your pencil that's applying pressure. You really just want to apply just enough graphite that it's sitting directly over top. You don't want to create a groove in the top surface of your paper. Otherwise, when you go into erase it, that groove, even if you remove the graphite markings, the groove is still there indenting the paper. And if you're like me and you use watercolor and all sorts of other mediums, that groove is going to be there and more pigment is going to sit in that groove if you do a watercolor wash afterwards. So really, really light touch. Try not to create that groove marking in the paper surface as you're writing things out. Okay, so here I'm going to create my angle lines, where I just rotate my paper and I draw a light line perpendicular to that surface. So we can see our spooky coming out, okay? So I'm going to draft out my letters very, very lightly. So you see, I've drafted very, very lightly. You can barely tell what's going on here. Maybe I can zoom in just a little bit more so you can see what's going on. Okay, here is where we're going to grab the silver retractable brush pen or retractable marker. I'm just gonna make a couple markings, make sure this pen is good to go. And I'm going to start with my S. Starting at that visualized 2 o'clock, I'm going to draw my S. And because this S feels a little bit too balanced for me, the way that I drew that initial line, I'm going to draw the shade on the bottom side. I'm going to do a serif on the top and the bottom. Okay, now for the P, drawing my 2 parallel lines, drawing that main top bowl, applying the shading on there, and finishing off with my serif. So we're making progress here. I'm going to draw my O. And one of the things that you can do when you have double O's, especially if you're running out of space, make one big and one small. That adds a lot of character to it. You can play around with your sizing there. I'm going to add my shade on either side. But don't feel like this need to make your double O's the same. They don't need to be the same. All right, my K. I do my serif, the arm, and the leg. I'm going to do the Y. We start off with the top left to bottom right. We come down to do the leg. And then we create the shade for that all at the same time. I'm going to come up. I'm going to round that out. I'm going to create my exclamation point. Maybe by the end of this class, I'll learn how to say that word, right? So we've got our letters here totally done. And what's super fun is if you have other pens, you can get different colors. I just have the white here, but you can get other colors and put them inside and do little dots to add texture. You can make these really cute ghosts and add little dots in their eyes. You can do a lot of fun things. And just erase all of the pencil markings after you're sure it's been completely dried. Let's do, this is our little faded ghost that we did earlier. Let's do Boo. And I'm going to draft it out with my regular pencil just so you can see how it's almost optional to erase your pencil markings when you're drawing on black if you write light enough. So I'm writing my Boo pretty close together and kind of centered along the top. You can barely see that, right? If I lean it, you can see it just a bit, but it's still quite faint. So I'm going to draw my B, 2 downstrokes. And you can see here, there's a huge difference between the texture of this page and the texture of this page. Add my shading. Draw the second O. And then their exclamation point. Just fill in that line just a little bit better. And there we've got our fun little watercolor version. I really love this watercolor version, how it just trails off like that. This might be my favorite one. And just how it's hard to see it over the computer, but the sparkle that kind of fades off gets a really, really spooky vibe. So it's really fun. You can always cut it down to a shorter size so that you don't have these little squeegee marks towards the bottom. But they're so fun, and you can give them to friends. You could, this is a really cute idea for, I don't know if your neighborhood community does the "you've been booed" thing where they drop off treats to someone anonymously and have a little this is pretty cute. So yeah, I hope you took a chance to craft along with me this afternoon and get creative with how to approach these different ghosts and the squeegee art. Does anyone have any questions for me before we finish up? Thank you, Elizabeth. I would love to, if we could get to gallery view. Does anyone want to take a moment to show their project? So turn on your video. Let's see what people have done. I want to see your wonderful projects. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Tina and Kathy. Sandy, thank you. And Michelle, good to see your familiar screen name. It's fun to see you. Thank you, Elizabeth and Lindsay. Thank you, Aubrey. Well, I hope you tag me on Instagram. I'm at Melissa. You can find me there. I'm also on Instagram at calligraphy.org. That's where I teach online classes. And a huge thank you to Sakura of America for the amazing products that they always have. These are truly my favorites to use on and off screen in classes and outside of class. I really truly love the products that they make and how they stand up over the course of time as well. Thank you again so much for coming.